Hi everybody, and welcome back to Eating at April's. Today I am going to show you how I make something that I eat 7 days a week, and something that I developed on my own. Years ago I went to a powwow and I got this corn soup is what they called it, and it's basically a chicken soup that's got corn and some other things in it. And I thought it was about the best tasting chicken soup I'd ever had. And it took me probably about a year or two to make it the way that I wanted it, because I was talking to people and nobody seemed to know how to make it that happened to be there. I think they made it, and then the people that were serving it were not the people that made it. They were volunteers and they were doing a very good job getting that sold, but they didn't know how to tell me how to make it. So I did some research, I read some books, and I found I went to the next powwow, and it must have been the same people making it because it was the same soup, and I paid extra close attention when I was eating it. There was hominy in it, there was little cubes of pork in it, and I could taste sage. That's what gave it that distinctive flavor. So it's basically a chicken soup with those things. I did some research in some of my Mexican cookbooks, and there's something similar called pozole. There's a recipe for that I have, and it's 50% chicken and 50% pork. And so I bought the biggest pork roast I could and put a whole chicken in and made the broth, and I didn't think it tasted any different than regular chicken broth, and maybe I'm wrong, but at any rate, I don't do both. I just do chicken. You can do chicken and pork. You can do all pork broth. It's up to you. But here we go. I'm going to do this in 2 videos because it's a 2-step process. And so the quickest video will be just me showing you how I get set up. And here we go. I'm going to go ahead and tilt this so you can see over the stove. Now, this is a pot of hamburger stew that I'm getting ready for my husband. He takes my stews for lunch through the week. So this will be cooking while we're talking about this. First off, what I do is I put my onions in the pan, and these look like green beans, but these are just plain green onions, and you can use any kind of onions you want. For the best flavor, I recommend a combination of green onions and leeks, but I'm just using green onions today. And then you can do one of 2 things. You can either skin and cut up a whole chicken, which is a lot of back-breaking work. The thing is, you want those bones. That's the thing. You've got to have enough bones in there to give it the right flavor. I quit using the whole chicken because I found that it's easier for me to get boneless, skinless thighs. I've got 3 of them. Go ahead and put those in. 3 boneless, skinless thighs. And then the bones that I use are from the chicken breasts, and I have like 4 medium large ones. You can have 3 extra large or 4 medium large. So I'm going to put those in there, and you see the bones are still in. I've pulled the fat off myself. And there's a tiny bit of fat that's going to be left on there. See, it's not much to worry about, though. It'll just make the broth a little bit more velvety. Okay, so we've got all that in there. And like with any pot of chicken soup, what you're going to want to do is put enough water to cover, plus a little teeny bit more. So let me do that. Fill it up. Almost. Smells so good already. There we go. Now, keep in mind, there's actually less water on it than it looks like because you've got all that other stuff in there. So I'm going to bring this to a boil and then lower the heat some and simmer it for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And I'll tell you when I know that it's done. I use this temperature gauge and stick it in the middle of the biggest chicken breast, and when it's 180 degrees, technically you can do just 165, but it's so much more tender if you boil it to 180 degrees. When that's done, we'll begin step 2. So this is the ingredients for step 1. And I'm going to talk to you about the ingredients for step 2. Tilt this up just a little bit. Now, for those of you who watch these videos, you're right, I don't have a professional camera. What I have is my laptop computer, so I can see what you guys are seeing. Now, I cheat. I do. I cheat when I do my soups because I feel like it. I discovered this by accident. I hadn't added as much water as I should have, and I wound up putting a little broth on. This particular broth, this is Simple Truth Organic, and I get it at Kroger. If you're out west, you can get it at Fry's, and I get the low sodium. This just adds a little bit of velvetiness to the broth that isn't there before, and I will probably put a little water in there, just depending on the consistency of each piece of chicken, the fat content that you want in the broth. You want it to be some fat, but you don't want it to be so fatty that it makes you sick to your stomach, because this is basically a chicken soup. It's a light dinner. And then my seasonings. It's going to be salt, black pepper, and sage. Now, I use the ground sage. You can use rubbed Dalmatian sage if you want, or you can use fresh sage. Sometimes I've done that, but it really doesn't taste any better in my opinion. But if it makes you feel better, you can use the fresh. Now, the big surprise is the pot full of vegetables. Look at this nice mix. You know I love vegetables in my soups. This is fresh sliced green onions, obviously, and corn, and carrots, and hominy, and celery. And these are equal amounts of these. I'll show you how I measure. Kroger brand again, gotta love it. I just get the 15.25 ounce can of the sweet corn, and you can use frozen if you want to. You know, I don't like the sugar that's in here, but I rinse it off. So I get a can of this and a can of the hominy. I rinse them both, and then I rinse out the can, and I measure exactly a can of fresh chopped green onion, fresh chopped carrots, and fresh chopped celery. And I have all this stuff on hand for when my broth is ready in an hour or an hour and a half, 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And then we will go from there.